Hi, my name is Karen Holmes. I'm the founder and director of the World Peace Organization for the One World Government. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about where we are as a planet and give you some context. If you're going to go on a trip, if you're going to reserve a seat on a plane, buy tickets on a plane or a train, you have to know where you are, where you're going, and then basically how to get there. Those are the things that you have to know, but it applies also when it comes to where we are as a planet and how we want to get to the point of creating the life we want or bringing world peace. World peace is such a big idea that we're talking. Actually, what we're going to do is we're going to cover all the way through to the end of our evolution. As I have an interesting book that I did with the Prime Universe that is, we're going to even talk about what is at the end of our evolution in terms of dimensions, and it's the scientific aspect of it is remarkable. We're talking about making our evolution from the third to the fourth and the fifth dimension over the next 20 years, but we're also making it the idea of the banquet table in the Bible, the parable of the banquet table, and looking all the end of that banquet table that includes all of humanity, all the way to the end of our evolution. We're starting out on a new trip, so if we are going to do that, how are we going to get there? Okay, so where we are now, that's what I wanted to talk about. If this is the point, this is known as the end times, and there have been talk about the end times, about the rapture, about the Armageddon, about the prophecy of the end times in the Bible and what is going on during the end times. They thought it was the end. How about the end of the democracy, the end of our government, our experiment in democracy? But everything in the spiritual level functions in cycles, so we're not at the end of our democracy. This is not the end of everything. This is the end of between 2008, the beginning of 2008, until the end of 2012. All the spiritual cycles lined up. It was like, we hit the millennium, and that was the end of a 1,000-year cycle, 21 years ago. But now, actually, all the spiritual cycles lined up from 2008 until 2012. And that's why change only occurs really easily at the end or the beginning of a cycle. In the 1100s, Saint Malachi gave prophecies about the end times for the Catholic Church, for all the popes. He gave prophecies about all the popes until the end. And we're going to talk about that too. We're going to go into that in greater depth. So we're talking about the end of a cycle and the beginning of a new cycle. We're actually dealing with a 1 billion-year cycle that ended, 270,000-year cycle. You might have noticed that a lot of things are coming up now, like what we're looking at. In the last 100 years, we've been looking at dinosaurs coming up. Various animals and plants, or animals and fish like the coelacanth that has been found again, talking about dinosaurs coming back in terms of taking the DNA, or even if it was in popular fiction. Okay, so we have the end times, and then now we're slowly starting to move into the beginning times of a new cycle. change happens only easily at the end or the beginning. So we're seeing lots of changes, lots of things that have happened. The end times in a person's life are kind of the same thing. Lots of, let's say, chaos, misunderstandings to make people believe that they can't get their life. So we're seeing all these, let's say, the pandemic is like a 100-year cycle pandemic. So where we are, this time period is known as Armageddon. When in 2003, when George Bush invaded Iraq, he preemptively struck Iraq. That was the point where all the power games ended. Now, we're going to go into all these things in far greater depth. So this is just where we are now. We've reached the point where the games don't work anymore. We're looking at people pushing the games. It's like when you reach the point where they don't work anymore, then let's say that a family is reaching the point where they can't afford to stay in their house anymore, or the family has grown to the point where they have to take a new step. It's the end times for that point. How about you have graduated getting ready to graduate from high school, and you have to decide, are you going to go to college? Are you going to go to a trade school? Are you just going to go into the workforce? What are you going to do? It's the end of a cycle, and it's the beginning of a new cycle. So that's where we are in our evolution right now, is the third dimension is actually ending, and that third dimension is based on power games. So the games don't work anymore. The games have stopped. It's a time period where people are going, I have to play the games. I have to play the games. My life depends on the games. That's why people are dying. It's because when you rely on the old and you can't transition into the new, how about you're in high school and you don't want to you're afraid of making the change to something. Some people make the change easily. Okay, I've always known I was going to go to college, or I was always known I wanted to be a such and such. I want to work in my dad or my family business. I've always known that. Those people make the transition easy. They know they're going to go into the military, and they're all ready to make the change. Some people don't make the change easily because they're holding on so tight to the past that they can't imagine coming into the new. So this is where we are now, some people are holding on to the past. Some people are holding on to the power games. They've gone down deeper into the games. When in the Bible it talks about Armageddon as being like the end times, which it is, but it's the end of where there are battles of Armageddon, and Armageddon actually happens every day. It's happening all the time as people make their transition from the old into the new. There's a point in it where the battles start when one person stands on the principles and the other person stands on the games. That happened, Armageddon, you could say, happened when, on a small basis, on a national basis, with our American Revolution. Because some of the people, the Sons of Liberty, got to the point where they couldn't tolerate what the power games of King George III, so they wanted their independence. They took what they had for several hundred years, okay, and then they decided that they were going to declare their independence and then go on. And now we're at the point now where we are declaring our independence from the old power games that the governments have been playing that are so oppressive to the people, just like George III. And then we're going to come up with a plan that letting go of the old and coming into the new. Some people are holding on very, very tightly to the old. And then other people, their lives are being affected by the games. Let's say How about the people who have no idea about vaccinations and that? So where we are as a planet is we're going through this end times idea coming into the new. The Catholic Church, with the prophecies of St. Malachi, the Catholic Church is St. Malachi prophesied the end times with, but was it Benedict the 16th? Pope Benedict the 16th, was he the last one? Was he the olive pope? Was he the in extremis pope? Or where is Pope Francis? Is he the last pope and in extremis and everybody's kind of fighting him? Or is he the new pope? Because the beginning is also a time of big change. There were two popes at the beginning. There are always two popes at the beginning and two popes at the end of the cycle. So is Francis one of the end? We'll get into that too. So we're going to find out more about all of these different ideas as we go through all of this. So that's part of our journey. But where we want to be, the journey where we want to be, is the point where everybody's creating the life they've always wanted. The point where everybody has a voice in their government. The point where everybody's treated fairly and equally. Because when you stop to think of it, if one person is the only person is creating his or her life, like the emperor of the planet, we're going to choose one person. No, nobody would ever go along with that idea. Everybody has to be able to create their life, and the people who are creating their life, you look and you say that, okay, and that's where Gautama Buddha was. He's one of our guides who's going to go into deeper idea. He was in a situation where he was fabulously wealthy. He had, as he was a child, he was growing up, he had everything he wanted. He was never even exposed to poverty. And then one day he went out there and he saw poor people. That poor people existed. And that is when he walked away from everything and he went out on his own and he experienced that. You see, it's like we can't have a situation where one person has it all and everybody else has nothing. And we can't have a situation where, let's say, half the people have it all and the other half don't have it. This is intolerable for people because what they do is it's like it just doesn't work. Nobody's in agreement with that. And so it's like this battle that's going on all the time. So what we want to create the perfect situation. Is this utopian? Is it possible to do that? Those are our unalienable rights that we have to be able to create our life without interference, to be treated fairly and equally, and to have a voice in our government. So let's say it's not utopian, it's just living the life that we've been promised. That we have a contract with our Creator, a soul agreement, to live that life, and our fears and our belief structures get in the way. So we have to address all those fears and belief structures. That's where we're going to be now on our journey. We know that what we've had is no longer tolerable, is not working. We've reached the point where we have to make a transition, or we're not going to. The end times, we can die at this point in time, and many people are doing that because they can't get their life. They believe they can't get their life, and it's been there all along, but they just didn't see it. So that's what we're going to do now, is we are where we are as a nation. We've reached the end. We've reached the point where people are standing up and protesting. They don't have a voice. You know, all the things that are happening that are so unfair, people feel that they don't have any say over anything, but we do. We have a remarkable amount of voice in our government. In fact, that's one of our unalienable rights. So right now we're looking at in our organization, we're looking at this big body of knowledge of things that are the things that we don't want. We're looking at what's intolerable, the things like coming up with the American Declaration of Independence. What we don't want. This is like our Declaration of Independence that we're dealing with now. And then we have to come together and decide what we do want. But then we have to also know how to manifest that into the physical. And even if one person steps out of the old, and then what it does is it starts to collapse everything else, the things that don't work anymore. When one person steps out of the game is over. All right, so that's where we are. Where we are as a planet is we're letting go of the old and we're coming into the new, even a billion-year cycle. So, what are we going to create? Are we going to wipe mankind off the face of the planet with existential threats? Or because there's a small group of people who don't see the problem of climate change, or they don't think it's popular? You can't get elected if you recognize climate change, and yet it's still hitting them right in the face, and they can't figure out, how can I make the transition? Well, hey, everybody, so many people have recognized it that it's not an issue anymore. It's just like a fact, So that's where it is. It's like a transition period from the old into the new. But then we all have to start working together to address each of these ideas. What happened? All our failed foreign policy in the United States were kind of like the overview idea. We're a melting pot of all the cultures. So it's kind of like if world peace can happen in my organization, we're parallel to the 200 countries. If it can happen in my organization, can it happen in the United States? Can it happen in the world? Okay, if we're 200 countries, we're parallel to the 200 countries, then we have to each stand up and bring world peace from our perspective. It takes, for world peace to come, it takes every person on the planet to help in the process. But what happens if the only thing that you ever had to do was to create the life that you've always wanted to create, and you just didn't think it was possible to happen? Okay, so how many people are willing to actually go out and create the life that they've wanted? I'm the first person to raise my hand. I like this idea. I'm a psychic, and I channeled all this information, and I'm willing to share it with other people. I've got so much of it that I'm willing to share, and that's why I'm here. I'm just a very average person who decided it's time for me to let go of old stuff that I didn't want and to come into the new. So I ask that you like, share, and subscribe. And even if you are not ready to make any changes yet, that's okay, because world peace is so big that only 2 people on the planet right now see that it's possible. And then what's happening is more and more people are seeing the idea breaks down into smaller and smaller pieces to the point where, let's say it's like a system. We have a brand new egg and sperm come together, and then it's like a brand new life starting right here. It starts or a seed it's like a totally barren plain, and one little plant is starting to grow, and then pretty soon it'll just break off and it'll start growing other ones, and it'll start creating energy force around it that'll enable other ones to grow too. All right, so eventually, even if you don't see it now, eventually you'll see it when the things that you're interested in about come about. What are you interested in? Are you interested in science and technology? How about the planning process? Are you an idea person? Are you interested in like an overview idea? How about science and technology? Coming up with a plan. How about something that new invention, a high-tech invention? How about business and economics? How about crisis in the family kind of ideas? You see like a disease like the pandemic happening, or what causes that? What's the root cause of that problem? You want to work on that? How about conflict resolution? How about security and capacity ideas? How about, are you kind of like somebody who can do everything and do it well, and you're like an expert at doing something? You're an artist and you can do it well. How about world peace? How about the children? What about the children and our evolution? Are you interested in the future? I am. I'm interested in everything. I'm kind of like an overview person. I'm so interested in the future that I asked what was happening if we are starting out at the beginning of our evolution, what's at the end of our evolution? And I found out the answer. I got the answer, and I'm going to share it with you too. So, but right now we have to know where we are. This is where we're starting out from. Okay, so like, share, and subscribe, and share with other people. Thanks for stopping by.